This is episode 1148.
In many cases, the initial progress may just be, hey, we've come up with a theory that if we connect sort of certain databases and data sets and have something that sort of generally works, is that something that we can then scale throughout the organization? So the initial sort of month or two, or in this case, maybe weeks, at the pace of change here, your KPIs are very different. They start out with, hey, does the thesis hold? Is there scalability? What do we need to then refine, and how do we improve it? Then beyond that, you have to go back and think about, are we using the right tools? We've got a lot of initiatives across the company that a year ago, we actually just I'm part of a group that looks at everything we're doing across the company. And it's amazing to me how the tools we're using has changed. So not that the premise or the principle around the what we're doing has changed, but the tools have changed dramatically, and the cost of those tools have also changed.
Every time we speak with Zane Rowe, I'm reminded that some leaders don't just adapt to disruption. They learn to read its early signals. And in this conversation, Zane does something unusual for a CFO steering a major AI agenda. He takes us back to where his instinct for pattern recognition was first shaped, long before Workday. What he draws from those roots surprised us because it reveals why AI isn't a side project at Workday, but a structural shift in how decisions are getting made. And yes, he hits every Workday speaking point. Zane is no doubt any communication officer's dream CFO. Still, if you've ever wondered how a CFO spots inflection points before they arrive, this is the discussion. Our talk with CFO Zane Rowe begins after this. Hello, CFO Zane Rowe is with us. Zane has built a one-of-a-kind career moving from data-rich airline operations to enterprise technology, and even making a bold pivot into sales at Apple to stretch his leadership lens. Now, as CFO of Workday, he's helping guide a company leaning hard into AI, platform connectivity, and disciplined global growth. And with Workday's latest earnings reflecting strong revenue and some margin expansion, this is an especially timely moment to check in. Zane, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Jack. It's great to be back. I'm thrilled to see you, and welcome all of your listeners, who I guess now can actually see us. So that's a big change since the last time we were together.
True. We're looking forward to discussing what the recent earnings might reveal. But first, just to reacquaint our audience with you and stay true to our tradition of starting at the beginning, we'd like to look back again with you, and more or less just over the last 12 months when we caught up with you last. And we're wondering, over the last year, it's clear Workday has entered another phase of its evolution. How has this period maybe reshape the way you think about your role, the CFO role, compared to your past chapters?
Sure.
Compared to airlines or enterprise technologies. Yeah.
I think there's no better time, candidly, to be a CFO. And as you know, Jack, with everything changing, I know we're going to be talking about AI at some point today. With the change in the CFO seat, I mean, there's so much happening, so many investment opportunities, and candidly, the opportunity cost to not investing in some of these key areas is as great as it's ever been as well. So Look, I think where we are today versus a year ago, thrilled to see the next chapter and the progress we're making at Workday. We've done a lot on the top line. We've done a lot on the bottom line. We feel like the business is moving in a great direction, have great engagement with our customers. I missed you this last year at Rising. We've had 2 Rising events since. And the way customers are adopting our platform and really just embracing it and driving AI and really thinking about what impacts it has to their top line growth as well as their bottom line growth. I think for all CFOs, this is a time of, opportunity, a time to become a more meaningful part of the business, to partner with whether it's business units or other functional areas, and to really drive the business with better engagement, better data, better access to data, more forecasting. It's really just a great time to be in business and to see that change come to life at such a rapid pace.
Just if we could just talk about that last 12 months, then what aspects of the past year have perhaps required you to adjust how you engage with different teams within the company? Again, it's so new, some of the technologies and how organizations are learning to use them. Similarly, you've had to think hard about where you spend your time.
No,
Tell us about where.
Yeah, it's a great point you make, Jack, because it's in order to drive change, it's really about, people, process, systems, and ultimately the purpose and where you're spending your time and how you're engaging. And in particular with technology and AI, no one area of the business or no one team can really drive change themselves. So I think we're at a point where having teamwork, collaboration has to be a key part of everything you're doing in business to really drive change and to drive the business forward, as well as learning from each other and thinking about what do we need in finance and the types of data that we need and what we need to help the rest of the business change, and to really think about how they adopt different technologies, different processes, and really evolve themselves. And it's that collaboration and working together that has always been important. There's never been a time in history where you sit back and say, oh, we can do it ourselves in finance or any other part of the business. But I feel like it's that collaboration that is utmost important today in driving change throughout the company and really becoming a part of the solution, not just calling out how we could do better, but really digging in and deciding collectively, how can we define teamwork in a different way across companies and across business to really make change and drive value for shareholders.
So I'm gonna find out where you've been spending your time one way or another. I know you've been collaborating, Zane. There's no question about that. But just anecdotally, I mean, is there some group that you've had lunch with that you've really that they didn't know who you were 12 months ago? Again, what we understand is that so many parts of the organization are exploring how to use this and trying to get the funding to support their efforts to execute. Right. The CFO better be aware of this if this is the type of investment we're going to make. Who are you lunching with? What part of the organization have you gotten to know better?
Well, I usually have a pretty quick lunch, but it's a fair call out, Jack. And I'd say, in particular, candidly, our product team and our head of product, and I have been very, very close, in spending a lot of time together. Not that I'm adding any value in helping him code or think about technology itself, but again, thinking about what are those trade-offs? Where can we lean in more with the business? And as it relates to opportunities like AI and like spend, how do we think about zero-based budgeting in a very positive light? Because most times you think about zero-based budgeting, everyone rolls their eyes and thinks about, how many pens and papers do I need in any particular year? But it's really redefining where we do the work, how we do the work, and having our product teams really at the cutting edge of where the business is going is important to me. And I candidly want to make sure that we're investing in that and that the product team can never come back to me and go, look, if you'd only funded this versus that. So how do we look at the work together and how do we look at those returns on investments together to think about what's working? Because, for all of us, we only have so much capital, right? So for many of us, it's how do we make those trade-offs? What's working, and then how do we pivot in a different direction if we need to? So spending a lot of time with product, but in the same vein, spending a lot of time on the go-to-market side. I love spending time with our customers. So, one of the benefits of being in this role is you get to have so many stakeholders between internally, you've got a number of peers, you've got people at all parts of the organization, you've got your board, externally, you've got investors who can always help out as well. And then you've got customers that are really there to help you, improve your product and think about how you can do a better job with them. Because in our business, success for us is success for our customers.
So again, you were just talking about making trade-offs. You were just talking, and when it comes to that ROI, can you reveal to us the nature of these discussions a little more in detail? We just want to know that again, the ROI on these investments is being calculated a little differently than what we might have talked with you about 2 or 3 years ago. Can you just reveal to us something of the nature of the ROI discussion, how it might have evolved from the initial start to some of the bigger investments that have now gone forward?
Yeah, it's a great call out, Jack. I think, when you look at what you're trying to solve for in the case of technology, or whether it's AI in a certain area of the business, in many cases, the initial progress may just be, hey, we've come up with a theory that if we connect sort of certain databases and data sets and have something that sort of generally works, is that something that we can then scale throughout the organization? So the initial sort of month or two, or in this case, maybe weeks, at the pace of change here, your KPIs are very different. They start out with, hey, does the thesis hold? Is there scalability? What do we need to then refine, and how do we improve it? Then beyond that, you have to go back and think about, are we using the right tools? We've got a lot of initiatives across the company that a year ago, we actually just had I'm part of a group that looks at everything we're doing across the company. And it's amazing to me how the tools we're using has changed. So not that the premise or the principle around what we're doing has changed, but the tools have changed dramatically, and the cost of those tools have also changed. So you have to think a little bit about, what are we going to build ourselves? What tools are we going to use? And then more broadly, how do we sustain that? What I've also noticed with AI is there are a lot of great initiatives, whether it's a 24-hour session on what could we change, and you go in there and you come up with some great ideas. But ultimately, driving that throughout the organization and making sure that you've got the right people to support it. You have reviews, much like you have reviews with your people, you've got to have reviews with your agents and with your processes. And how do we include that into the company, and how do we embrace that kind of change? Ultimately, there's an ROI trade-off that needs to be made, and an investment that has to be made for the long-term durability. And some of the initiatives we have are fairly short-term in nature. We've got other initiatives that go beyond a year, and then others even beyond that. But it's how we think about embracing that change and looking at those returns sort of along that journey that are important. It's a great call out of yours there.
Let's turn to your results. From your perspective, what does this reflect some of the success you've enjoyed over the past year, just given the direction you just described?
No, I think, look, our results reflect the strong returns that we're seeing in a number of our growth initiatives. We've laid out a number of initiatives, everything from international expansion, AI, as you would expect, for us entering into both new markets and areas like the medium enterprise, and then just more broadly working with our customers and cross-selling and going back to our customers and having them recognize some of the value of the products that we've not only built internally, but also inorganically. We've made a number of acquisitions over the last sort of 6 months that our customers are benefiting from. So it's that relationship with our customer base. We're thrilled with the performance we've seen. We continue to grow the business and continue to see both top line growth and bottom line growth as we become more efficient, and candidly take advantage of a lot of AI tools ourselves to drive efficiencies throughout the business.
I just have two. I'm going to narrow the lens on 2 questions related to the earnings. We wanted to know total revenue and subscription revenue both saw double-digit growth. What do you view as the primary drivers behind that momentum during the quarter?
I think there's, the strength of the platform. We've got a platform that is really, I think appreciated by our customer base, both the existing customer base. It's very attractive to new customers. We're selling many more full suites. So if we're most well known for our HCM suite, which is human capital management. and then with our financial suite that's been building over the years. And now we're selling a lot more of that together, and customers are recognizing the value of having both. And again, leveraging that technology. So we've got this really great mix of both existing customers that keep coming back for more of our products, and then new customers that have the attraction to that full suite and the platform that has been, out there for many years. We've always been cloud enabled. We're cloud first technology, and we're able to leverage AI off that. And it's really the sort of AI thread that I think is driving a lot of that growth as well.
Now, Workday expanded operating margin year over year as well. What were the most important factors contributing to that efficiency?
Look, obviously, having top line growth always helps. If you're a business that's growing, you can always think about how do we continue to grow, leverage the technologies we have. So we've obviously adopted a lot of our own technology using AI and doing a good job on that front. And then being really thoughtful in where we're making those investments and where we're otherwise pulling back or recognizing some savings. So I think we've done a credible job over the last number of years. We've still got a way to go. We've got a midterm target out there that requires us to drive more operating leverage in the business and increase those margins over time. But we're very pleased with that balance of continuous investment while recognizing some of the savings and some of the scale of the operation as we grow that top line. So it's a nice balance that we've struck there on top line growth as well as margin improvement over time.
I want to go back to AI a little bit with you. Earlier, you said you were part of a group, and I don't know if it's an ad hoc group or something official. It sounded like it was representing leaders from different functional areas. I'm making a guess. You can correct me.
Right, Jed. Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us something more about that, how that came to be, or what exactly that is? What were you touching on there?
We literally are embracing AI tops down. So the product, I've got a meeting right after this with our product lead on the financial product so that we're completely integrated across the company and how we think about evolving the technology and growing and building out the technology. The group I referenced just happened to be the leaders of some of the functional areas as we focus on corporate AI initiatives. So setting our technology and what we sell aside, we also embrace what we call everyday AI and have a number of initiatives that we want to make sure that we're using similar tools. So we love the innovation idea within the functional areas, and everyone has a laundry list of opportunities that they think AI can help solve. But we also want to have a group of leaders that can spend some time with it, understand where the changes are, how things are adopting, and make sure that we're all thinking about it in the same way and thinking about it collectively as a team. So it really helps us out when it comes to partnering and building a lot of these AI products, as I mentioned earlier, whether it's finance, HR, or other groups, combining with our IT groups and other areas, including legal in many cases, to really think about how do we think about responsible AI, how do we grow AI within the business, and really think about the change that it's making, and then come back and reflect. Part of it is looking at what we're doing today and how it's changed versus where we were just a year ago or just a few months ago in many cases, and how do we continue to learn from each other and evolve the business. I mean, it's such an important and a key differentiator for us, and these technologies are evolving so quickly. It's that complete engagement model that we think is very important for the business.
We always like to just touch on metrics quickly, and we've discussed these with you before, but as you spend this time with your product people, we want to know whether are Zane's lines of sight into the product world, everything we would assume they are. They're razor sharp, but we know that there's always greater depth is always needed or wanted. Can you share with us how are your lines of sight into product?
Look, I think they're pretty good, but it's mostly me relying upon a team of experts, both on the finance side. And what I love about the product team is they're always very welcoming, and they want to share their capabilities and what they're working on, as well as the resources it's taking to do that. And they many times want to hear from customers as well as others on the team as far as how do we value different initiatives that they're working on, how do we think about pivoting in some cases, what is working, what's not working. And for a lot of that, it's just having that dialogue. And I think the best thing you can do is just spend time with them and hear what they're working on and understand what their challenges are, and really think collectively on how we can solve some of those together. But mostly it's actually them showing what they're able to leverage. And like I said, there's been no time in history where change has happened so fast. And what these teams are able to do using the tools that they have is just simply remarkable. And that's exciting, both, internally for us as well as sharing it with our customers, because you can really show them, no matter where they are on their journey, how you can make improvements. And also it's just sharing knowledge. And, a lot of people just want to think about how can we make our processes even better. And I'm the same way. We meet with a group of Bay Area CFOs quite regularly to understand what things that we're doing, how can we improve, and what can I learn from other CFOs in the business.
Zane, I want you to indulge me here. The product team is having a group of its most senior leaders together discussing something, and Zane walks in. What is it they think Zane is going to ask them? What is the relationship here? Reveal it to us. What are you? Is it like, oh gosh, Zane's going to ask us for those numbers, or no? I mean, is it more of a give and take? Try to help us understand this organization, this Workday organization.
No, I think
important relationship.
Usually it's just trying to, for me to learn a little bit more from them. For us, there's not only the product engagement, then there's the go-to-market part of the business, and then of course the customer side. And there's this continuous dialogue that we always refine as far as how do we get better between the products we're building and then the ultimate demand coming from the customer side. So usually it's me asking for insight, what is working, what's not working, maybe sharing something on, hey, this product we noticed didn't do as well last quarter, and is that because of the product, or what feedback are they hearing about, or what's our go-to-market team hearing about, or otherwise, in many cases, a lot of our products are actually doing quite well, so we're trying to understand. I may be in there asking, hey, what are the success stories that you're hearing? How are customers using it? And then on the go-to-market side, how do we make sure more customers can take advantage of it? So it's really just a dialogue. There's never, I don't think there's never a meeting where I come in with one agenda and they're always like, oh gosh, here's the CFO and he wants to know where the savings are going to come.
You know what you come in there with, which is questions. And we hear this frequently. What the CFO has to do is be asking the right questions. I'm saying the cliche. I'm just trying to, but I suspect that's what Zane's known for. He'll come in and he'll ask what can be a pointed question for certain folks, and you're looking for the response. You're looking to understand better. How am I doing? Right.
Yeah, and then also hear a little bit about what they have to say, right? Because many times I don't have even have all the questions. A lot of them have some insight that I can learn from, and it's really just having that dialogue. I mean, so much of management is having good dialogue, across the company, so that there's complete transparency and there are no surprises, and that's part of the exciting part of the business in my mind.
And I'm not looking for a specific metric or what have you, but after these types of discussions, has the top of mind metrics for the group been altered? Have you together said, we've been focusing too much over here, and this is what it turns out matters, and this is what we hear about customer churn or what have you. Very often, it's very difficult to determine these things. How am I doing? Am I close to your world or not really? Or my organization this size has a whole different,
No, you're on it, Jack. I mean, I think it's important to pivot in some cases, recognize, no team, even as proud of as I am of the team that we have, everyone can learn from each other, and we can always alter things and think about where are we putting our resources. And a lot of that conversation is around where the next change can happen, and collectively, where are we putting the investments, and are we getting the returns that we expect out of that? And then as it relates to timelines, there could be some things where I don't mind investing, and we collectively as a company don't mind investing in something now that we know will only pay off a few years from now. But then I want to hear about progress. Are we hitting our KPIs? Are we really thinking about those initiatives? And has the market changed, or has that opportunity changed where we can either dial back a little bit or otherwise lean in more and say, look, it was 2 years, but now we need to either acquire a company to help us accelerate that, or acquire talent to accelerate that, or just, put more resources in a certain area or on a certain initiative to drive that a little bit faster. So it's really, as you think about the marketplace changing, and with the evolution of AI being so fast, and with what we can do with our technology changing so rapidly, even as we think about agents and which ones our customers are asking us more about versus not, how do we then redeploy our resources to make sure we're getting to the customers faster and helping them on their journey? And it's a lot of that dialogue, because you're always sort of altering or changing things just a little bit. And then in some cases you say, look, let's pause on this initiative because it'll still be there a year from now, and let's really accelerate another initiative. Or otherwise, let's think about how we, we're always inquisitive on the acquisition side. What are the technologies or the people and the talent that we feel like are out there and could be more helpful to us being a part of our workmates?
You mentioned acquisitions. Just as far as M&A is concerned, what are your priorities now? It's always been an acquisitive company. I think a fair characterization, but correct me. And what's the M&A priorities that you're putting forth?
Yeah, broadly, I'd say around AI technology and really thinking about how do we continue. I mean, we've got a great roadmap. We've got really talented people, but how do we augment that and go even faster? Because customers are really wanting more and more. And how do we do that in a smart way? We've always had a very high bar, as you allude to, Jack. We've always been inquisitive. We've had a very high bar on, is it the right technology? Is it the right cultural fit? Do we have the right team? And can we really drive change with it and have that become part of this portfolio? And with the platform we have and the last acquisitions that we've made, we're very, very confident that what we're doing here is not only helping our teams internally, but again, with our customers recognizing value coming out of this platform. So it's exciting stuff that we're doing. And it's not like you acquire a company and say, hey, just give us a year or two and you'll see change. In many cases, we're counting it in months and quarters as far as the types of change that the customers would recognize and benefit from, from the technologies and the incredible teams that we've acquired. So thrilled to, continue to grow the family here.
From your vantage point, what's the most meaningful way AI has begun to change how you think about Workday's long-term strategy?
I don't know if it's been a significant change in strategy. One of the great things about Workday, and one of the reasons I joined about 2.5 years ago, is because, we've been working on AI here for a number of years. So it's not that it's a strategic pivot, but it's that acceleration and what was sort of ideas just a few years ago. With the tools we have and with AI moving so fast, we can actually do so much of that so much faster. So whether it's the UI UX part of the business or the agent side of the business, and how we expand our portfolio now to include even, we talked about having HCM being a big part of it, but who's going to be managing your agents, and how do you think about those resources, which we've now included as part of our portfolio and agent system of record? Bless you. So that when you're managing through that, you're managing your people as well as your money. And then, of course, with your agents, and that agentic level, I think, is just really, it's really put everything in sort of this fast speed mode. And it's so exciting to be a part of that. So the strategy is still very similar, but now it's even more comprehensive because of agents and because of the change we can drive with our customers. So it's incredible to be on this journey because things are happening fast. And, when you go to events like Rising, which is our big customer event, and you see how your customers are using your technology to really change people's lives and to make things better and faster and drive value that way. It's just such an exciting time to be a part of this business.
You mentioned that there are new tools being adopted or being used. There's some excitement around them. And you can, if I'm mischaracterizing that, just correct me. But, what have you learned about driving adoption of new tools internally? And maybe they're AI related. I think you're referring to tools. I assume they're AI related. Maybe not.
Yeah. No, I mean, so we've, I mentioned briefly earlier that we have an initiative called Everyday AI, and it's really how we allow all of our workmates to embrace AI, and how our IT groups called Business Technology proliferates all of these great tools for people to adopt. But along with that, whether it's sort of any type of sort of learning and development opportunity, I mean, it's part of what we actually sell. So we encourage and we actually measure the usage of these tools and ensure that, whether you're in finance, that you have great knowledge of sort of certain AI tools that could benefit you. We have all kinds of classes, and we're really trying to think about the skills that the workforce has today, myself included. By the way, I've got a team that are always driving on, have you used AI? Have you used Gemini in this way? Or how are you thinking about Notebook LM? And all of of these tools in addition to our own tools, but how do we think about embracing AI and then ultimately changing where we spend our time and how we spend our time, and what has changed in business. And I challenge all of my teams, all of my direct reports, have a meeting with me where we talk about what are you doing with AI today, and what do you expect that to look like a year from now? And then we have check-ins to see, are we making progress there? How are we getting better? Are our forecasts better? On the accounting side, do we have anomaly detection? Are we being more accurate than we've ever been? Are we moving faster where it makes sense to move faster? And being sort of having, better granularity in that data, and really thinking about every process and every part of finance as we know it. How is that changing, and what does good and great look like? And that's what we're shooting for. And then it's socializing with, as I mentioned earlier, with peers, my finance peers across the Bay Area and even beyond. I mean, being part of communities to really see what others are doing and how finance and more broadly is changing. I think it's very exciting because, the types of analysis you can go through today with less people, you can go deeper into the organization. As long as you've got good data and a great data set and good tools, you can really come up with insights that I think will change business and how you think about business, which is just exciting to be a part of that, sort of data-based decision making.
Can you just give us some perspective on, let's just say, AI and forecasting compared to 2 years ago? How is your team leveraging AI in the tasks related to forecasting?
If you look at our cash forecasts and getting into more detail on when we expect to be paid by customers and all of the elements of, say, a cash forecast, there's so many more variables that you can pull into that forecast now than ever before. So that's just an example on becoming more precise in certain parts of the business and factoring in seasonality in different ways and running multiple models, but where it would take, a group of people a couple of months to test it all, you can now compress that timeline and come up with, hey, this model has a much better correlation and here's why. And then keep testing that and keep, adopting that, and then get better at whether it's a forecast, including more variables into a forecast. And even on the go-to-market side, when we think about, we look at your pipeline and you look at the propensity to sell and different types of customers, what success you've had, and how do we think about renewal opportunities? Every part of the business can really, I think, benefit from having more data and then having more insight into that data in ways that they simply haven't had the time or the amount of people to dig into that previously.
We always ask for a finance strategic moment. This is sort of our generic question. And,
sure.
Last time we met, I was always looking for an anecdote or something you could share back in time that revealed to you how important finance was. Your tour of duty at Apple, I think it might have been that. You had so many that you shared with us last time.
On a number
but you do. You have this multi-chapter CFO career rich with, insights that you share with us. So just asking you to go back to the well once, and we're hoping you might be able to look back in time and share a moment of insight that you experienced as a finance person. Anything come to mind?
Sure. I could probably name a few and you can decide which ones to pick. I think for us, for me, myself, this year was recognizing the importance of investing more into AI. And again, both organically and inorganically, recognizing that our peers, our competitors aren't sitting still, and our customers want to benefit from these AI opportunities. And I think the finance moment isn't always just finance itself, but it's really spending time with other groups, but identifying an opportunity together. And it's easy to think about, hey, where do we cut here and there? But more importantly, it's where do we invest to drive returns? And I think the finance moment, if I were to characterize this year for us as a company, and again, not just finance, is leaning in more than ever into these new technologies, but being thoughtful in how we do it, because again, AI isn't going to solve everything. It's a tool for many opportunities. It's not a tool for everything, but leaning in a smart way to think about both organic growth and inorganic growth to drive returns and drive value for our shareholders.
The role of CFO at Workday, does it even resemble your day-to-day inside the airlines business? I know it was data, and that was a data-rich organization.
Yeah.
That's it, though. That was it.
No, think
there are
about
some through lines.
one of the things I can tell you that I can't remember if I mentioned this last time, but I spent a lot of time in the airlines in what we called flight profitability, and thinking about, which is why I loved the data coming together to come up with insights. And we drove flight profitability because we believed a competitive advantage would be really understanding what drove performance in the airline. Because you'd many times have a full flight, but you wouldn't understand how many of those passengers were connecting and what was the ultimate fare you're getting, how many were being driven through certain channels and versus other channels. So really having insight into the business. And that's where we developed this portfolio of which routes were working well, which weren't, and how did we make decisions. I love the idea of finance being part of the decision-making process. And that was sort of one of those areas where, we built the system. It just so happened that I built it on EMC technology, which is where I spent some time, and which is part of why I love the idea of having immense amounts of data. And there, at the time, I'm sure there are other industries now that can match airlines, but at the time, airlines were driving so much telemetry off the aircraft, so much data. And being able to make decisions out of that data was critically important. And then you migrate to industries that either have less or otherwise have actually had success almost despite really understanding the success of the business and the data behind. So it's now, how do you add more data to those decisions? Because before, you may have a wonderful product that's just selling left and right, but do you really have insight into how that product's ultimately used, or what types of customers are ultimately using it? And for all of us as companies mature, that need to have better sort of decision making driven by data becomes more and more important. And that's where AI becomes the big equalizer, because I don't need to have a team of 100 people going through the data and analyzing the data. You can do so much of that with AI, and having those capabilities in the hands of just a few people, but with rich technology, I think is the insight that you get today that you otherwise simply wouldn't have had historically.
You've been in the CFO role, though, multiple times. You stepped into this, and you've had multiple first 100 days experiences, advice for new CFOs. And again, depending upon what industry, perhaps that advice would be a little different, or maybe not. But provide some advice for first 100-day CFOs.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the many things that I think we can always learn, whether you're in your first 100 days, 300, 400 more days, and having done this for a while, is to really think about where you're spending your time. Jack, you asked me when you spend time here and when you spend time there. Many times there's so much work to do. It's almost easy just to spend time in your function. And you can, all of us are working day and many times night as well. And I think it's taking a time out and saying to yourself, I really should be spending time first and foremost with your own team, but then with customers is important, with shareholders. And in the CFO role, and in any role in finance, and I could argue even beyond finance, you've got this broad stakeholder base. Take an inventory on where you're spending your time. And this is something that I can always improve upon myself. And I'm always trying to sort of redefine those boundaries, because you need to be spending time and getting insight from a broad swath of people, as well as your own mentors to continue to coach yourself, and as well as even being critical with how you're acting and reacting to certain things in life. So I think there's always an opportunity to learn, but I think it's taking inventory of, how am I getting information, and am I spending too much time in one area versus others that can be very valuable. As you point out, for me, going back to different roles I've had and different opportunities, that's all because I've had different engagement with a wide sort of group of people that I think just has helped me over time.
That's an interesting point of comparison. I mean, you might think back there and you say, wow, I spent so much time with investors there. I mean, it was half of my time, whereas that's perhaps not the case here. Or maybe it is. I don't know. But, or you spend so much time with the product people. I mean, I have to believe the commitment there is much more larger than other tours of duty that you've had. I know I'm stating the obvious, but this is what I'd like you to reflect on. How this role of a large enterprise in a software company is so unique in specific areas. And you have this unique point of comparison that other CFOs don't. That's what makes talking to Zane Rowe special, in my opinion.
I think what's unique with software is, in any other industry, there are these barriers where, in the airline industry, we used to use our RASM performance versus other carriers, because you knew it was governed by GDP and airport capacity and how many aircraft you have. So the guardrails are very well defined. The difference in the opportunity with technology, in particular with software, is there are no guardrails. I mean, if we come up with something that customers are truly going to embrace, which the teams try every day, and it's back to the conversation we had about really thinking about investment levels and prioritization, because the cost of not doing something is so great because somebody else could be doing it. And you look at technology companies, those are tremendous technology companies today. How do you stay on top? I mean, I was thinking about it earlier. There are a lot of technology companies that, 10, 15 years ago, you thought were as big as they're ever going to be and can continue to grow. And today you never talk about them. And yet there are others that are incredibly successful that you didn't hear about 10 and 20 years ago. And in the case of Workday, how do we continue to challenge ourselves? And in my role, how do I continue to work with the business to really think about this limitless opportunity? I mean, our TAM is huge. It's in the hundreds of billions of dollars. And yet our revenue is much less than that. So, we have nothing but ourselves to drive as far as getting to that opportunity. And as a CFO, how do we invest the right amount? How do we think about the balance sheet and all of the components, the sort of more traditional finance metrics? But where do you lean in and make sure that you're driving the right culture to see that innovation and change that's ultimately going to drive success? And that's very different your parameters are very different to where you've been previously, where it's like, okay, I've got something that works well and something that doesn't, but the standard error around the mean is pretty tight, where in technology, we can continue to drive change and they have customers, we're a global business, you can really make a difference. So I think that's one of the challenges you have in this role, and one of the differences in this role, having the balance sheet we have and the opportunity we have and the tremendous teams we have to drive that kind of change.
Zane, I've got one more question. A final question. You've touched on a few of these, but we'd like to know for the next 12 months, what are your priorities as a CFO? We end every episode the same way. We have to go forward with this, although I think you've already identified a few. But what are your priorities for the coming 12 months?
I mean, I think for me personally, it's, getting engaged and involved and really helping the business lean in the right areas and invest in the right areas for this change. I mean, I mentioned this enormous TAM that we have. We've got incredible people at Workday, and it's me helping them produce some great products that ultimately our customers will benefit from, and that'll be reflected in our financials. So laser focused on making sure we do that. We've got a number of initiatives I mentioned earlier, and we're going to be focused heavily on those initiatives, and I'm going to be spending time in those areas as well, really driving top line growth.
Zane Rowe, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you so much, Jack, and thanks everyone for listening in or watching.